Tim's News Explosion. 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 Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of Tim's News Explosion. During these news blasts, I untwist the established news narrative for the week in a fast-paced 30-minute digest every Monday evening on the Wilms Front channels. It is 8:30 p.m. here in Melbourne, where my city, again, and the whole state of Victoria is in yet another stage 4 lockdown. It's the fourth lockdown for Victoria over the course of the COVID pandemic. We now match Auckland's record for the number of lockdowns, though Melbourne has been in the longest out of both Australia and New Zealand. So this is after the Indian variant that a Melburnian caught in hotel quarantine in South Australia back on May 6th, which is over 3 weeks ago, spread undetected around Melbourne for 2 weeks until 4 positive cases emerged in the Epping area last Monday, which I brought to you on last week's show. Epping is a suburb in the far north of Melbourne, and that is where case 0 was. Many of the positive cases that have been traced through contact tracing have proven to have asymptomatic are asymptomatic, or they didn't have obvious symptoms, and many of them have gone to work all around town for the past 2 weeks. There was quite a humorous post or meme going around on Facebook, which is because we're up to 200 plus exposure sites. So average person, this is basically sums up me, get up, go to work, go home. There might be a cheeky supermarket trip or a meal at a restaurant in there too. COVID positive person, get up, go to 5 different Bunnings on the way to work, have 19 coffee breaks in different cafes throughout the day, cross the border to go to Woolies, visit every ancestry listed relative they have before heading to a mate's house for a few knockoff beers and a busy day of ruining the world. Because it does seem that a lot of these COVID positive cases have been all around Melbourne, and there's exposure sites in regional Victoria. This is why the acting Premier James Merlino on health advice decided to have stage 4 restrictions, including the 5-kilometre radius throughout the whole of Victoria, because there are exposure sites in regional Victoria, and they didn't want Melburnians to flee to a free regional Victoria. There are no active cases in this cluster, which now stands at 51 in regional Victoria. Most of it is concentrated in the north, roundabout near Epping, where case 0 was. Now, we were told by the acting Premier, James Merlino, that this Indian variant, when he was announcing the 7-day circuit breaker lockdown, which everyone's predicting will be extended, given that we are averaging around about 5 or 6 cases per day, and the exposure site list continues to grow, and now they're particularly alarmed, the health authorities, that a few aged care workers and aged care residents have tested positive, despite some of them having their first dose of the vaccine. Now, according to James Merlino, this Indian strain is the most super virulent strain traveling at super speed that we've seen. which basically begs the question, how is India here? This is new daily cases in India. Obviously, it was in the news for so long. The India reaching up to peaking at 400,000 cases per day. But look at the curve now. It's slowly going down. So if this Indian strain is so hyper, ultra infectious, then how is India managing to flatten the curve, albeit without a lockdown? And how did the UK flatten the curve? Remember, they were the original super strain. And now, as I mentioned, a lot of these people who've tested positive for the Indian strain were asymptomatic. Apparently, I've heard that the Indian strain has sort of a different type of symptoms. One of them is diarrhea, and there's also I got this voice message shared to me from somebody who'd just tested positive to Indian COVID. This was their symptoms.
Hi guys, quick message. Just so you know, and I wanted you to hear it from me first. Went hospital today for a blood test and positive for Indian COVID. They don't think it's too bad, but they said they could get worse over the weekend. And just that you another cherry bunch of people did that episode.
Yes, though I have to say that the original Wuhan strain of the virus, it didn't cause people who caught it to speak Mandarin. So I'm not sure what's up with that there. But the India has now hit out at social media companies for calling it stop calling it the Indian variant. Which I always thought it was strange that you weren't allowed to call it the Wu flu or the China virus. But it was perfectly okay for quite a while to call it the Indian variant. Apparently now, because there's been a spike in COVID cases in Thailand, there's now a Thai variant that's in the UK after 109 cases found in the UK. I wonder what one of the symptoms are of the Thai variant. Maybe exploring caves during wet season. Sorry, that's another attempted joke there. So yes, we're back in, as I said, here in Victoria, stage 4 restrictions, which, as I said, the 5 kilometre radius. It also means masks have to be worn both indoor and outdoors, despite I don't think there's ever been a case traced in Australia through outdoor transmission. Victorians are only allowed 2 hours of exercise per day with one other person. Each household is only allowed one trip to the shops every day to get the things that they need. One person per household. That's what the new directions say. They don't. The documents don't officially call it a lockdown. They call it a circuit breaker action. That's the terminology that they use there. But one of now, I should start by saying that with the 3 previous lockdowns, there were only 4 reasons you were permitted, to use their terminology, to leave your home. But this time, there is 5 reasons now. And the 5th reason is to get a COVID vaccine. Now, these mass vaccination hubs that have been throughout Victoria basically mothballed, with hardly anyone going to them until this week, until the latest Melbourne outbreak here. If I go to, this is the Fairfax, or should I say 9 newspapers have now got a vaccine tracker here. So national vaccination progress, we apparently have 1.28% fully vaccinated. And we have if I go here, 15% of first dose here. Now, Victoria is slightly behind New South Wales on the both on the first doses and fully vaccinated. That's because New South Wales has more people. But you've all seen the queues, people at all these mass vaccination hubs after nobody going there. They're all lining up for 6 hours to get their COVID vaccine first dose. Adrian Anti-Bullying says, I'm going to ring up Daniel Andrews on Tim. What, Hadron? What did I do? Well, tomorrow is June the 1st, which is the first day of winter officially, even though we've had a pretty big freeze, frost, rain during this autumn. It was definitely an early winter here in Melbourne. The chilly weather, where it's basically 2 to 3 degrees overnight in most places in Victoria. Certainly, the chill of this pre-winter snap is certainly the chill that we're feeling from, well, our lives being frozen again, our lifestyles being frozen, way of life being frozen again. So, as I said, it's scheduled to end on Thursday at 11:59 p.m. There's 7-day circuit breaker lockdown, but everyone's predicting the lockdown will be extended by who knows. I know that there's a few people who have had it on good authority from their reliable sources that lockdown will be 3 weeks. We shall see. There will definitely be, if the strict lockdown is lifted, there will certainly be a strict easing period, which with lots of restrictions still and mask mandates at most places then. So I'm not sure about whether these people will be 3 weeks of the hard lockdown or there'll be some relaxation in between. Victorians' mental health is suffering. Yes, we are all being re-traumatized again. We were in February with the 5-day circuit breaker lockdown. It brings up all the trauma again because, and this time there is no job keeper program, though I've been on record saying that job keeper was a flawed program. The most obvious example of that was retailers such as Jerry Harvey getting JobKeeper when Harvey Norman has done gangbusters during this pandemic. Now, I notice a lot of the commentators on the right, such as Rita Panahi, saying that, the federal government shouldn't bail out Victoria for another lockdown. Well, tell that to the casual people who in hospitality who are going to have a 0 on their paycheck this week, and their bills aren't certainly going to go down to 0. Tell that to them. Why should those casual workers basically be destitute, not being able to afford to eat, just to punish the Victorian government for their various flaws when it comes to contact tracing? That is just basically and this is what pisses people off about the political blame game, how governments do things out of spite. This is real people here. The fitness industry again has been shut down as well. Major events, music industry. It's not politics. This there's as I said, there's people who have a 0 paycheck this week. There are parents who will be forced to keep their children home. Children are going to have their education disrupted again. I feel sorry for families in that regard. It is really a sad situation, and the political blame gaming really discounts the real life effects of these lockdown decisions and the various politicking that goes on there. Now, as soon as the lockdown was announced by acting Premier James Merlino, Dan Andrews, the Premier is his official title. He's often known as Chairman Dictator Dan. They've penciled in a June return for him. James Merlino was asked, will Dan return tomorrow since it's June 1? James said, no, he's still recovering, but we're still hopeful that he will return sometime in June. I noticed that his Facebook page, Dan Andrews, is still largely inactive. It didn't even post about the new lockdown there. We know how much Dan loved announcing the lockdowns. I have to say that James Merlino doing the daily press conferences makes it a bit easier than when Dan did them. His grumpy, mean, lecturing, hectoring, finger-pointing face every day. I don't miss that at all. James Merlino is a bit more measured there. Now, when the lockdown was announced on Thursday to come into effect on Friday, Melbourne's anti-lockdown activist community was mobilised into action. They held a snap protest outside Flinders Street Station on Thursday evening, 7 p.m. This was before the lockdown came into effect. People who gave speeches there were Monica Schmidt from Reignite Democracy Australia, Rafael Fernandez from Balachi, and Nick Patterson, the founders of the Australian Peacemakers, David Limbrick of the Liberal Democrats, member of the Upper House of Victorian Parliament, also gave a speech there. Now, this past Saturday, should I say Saturday, the 29th of May, that's when the nationwide Millions March Against Mandatory Vaccinations was scheduled to took place. It took place in all the other major cities, with Melbourne going into a snap lockdown. Assistant Commissioner Luke Cornelius, aka Chief Wiggum, aka Fat Bastard, who's responsible for all the Northwest Metro public order operations, mailed out a series of threatening letters to known anti-lockdown protesters and activists. He must have printed out quite a number and got his minions to hand deliver them to various people. Rafael Fernandez got one. Nick Patterson got one, though he didn't accept it. Rukshan Fernando, who's the real Rukshan, independent journalist, even he got one, even though he's there as an independent reporter there. So all these letters went out. Jazz Sebi got one up in Wodonga, even though, well, where Jazz is up in Wodonga, he's not under the jurisdiction of Luke Cornelius, though. Yeah, Luke Cornelius must have thought that he was planning to go, which Jared said in response to him getting his letter that he's not going because his wife's about to give birth. That's why Brawl in the Brain and Hard Knocks is on hiatus for this for the foreseeable future. Now, there were a number of you would say hardcore anti-lockdown activists who turned up at Flagstaff Gardens on Saturday for the protest as it was scheduled, even though the show directions, as they're known, banned public protests. The police cornered off Flagstaff Gardens and told them to move on. Now, Nick Patterson gave them, well, as he always does, a lecture on the law and common law. So they decided to walk away.
Line, look at this.
This was shot by Rafael Fernandez. I tried commenting on a video.
You back up. Look at this.
Look at this.
This
Victoria.
Moving on.
We got 900 people watching right now. Hey, you piece of shit!
I'm not sure who this individual is, but this is some professional Munro.
You can't even, they just chase you down because you don't want to talk to them. You know. That's what you do! Can't Russ to go now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no way. Well done, guys. All your brutality caught on film. Are you? All of it. All of it. Are your mothers? Is your mother and father proud of you?
It just justifies our response that's coming. What you've done is completely justifying what we're going to do.
See you later.
We have grounds for it now. We had them already.
They probably think that we're still protesting, but we're not.
Look at it.
We are heading to Clatwin Street.
We're going home. We're going home now.
Clatwin Street. Intersection.
Tell you guys to go, we just want to go home.
All right, boys, girls. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
The seriousness on all your.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We should. They're getting way ahead.
Hey, go back. Go back.
Nah. They're going to grab you. No.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, we'll turn around. The cops are beating people. The cops are beating them. The cops are beating them and pepper spraying everyone. They're pepper spraying everyone. Look at this, everyone. Australia. Have a look, Australia. Australia, are you watching? Australia, are you watching? Australia, are you watching this? They got the batons out over peaceful protesters who are leaving home. Did you see this? They were leaving. Everyone was going home, and look what these police officers are doing.
So there you go there. Now, as you can see, that was not the best footage that RAF got of the police going for Nick, as the caption said on the screen. The mainstream media, they're allowed by the police to get their snaps of Nick and the police going at it. But RAF and the other independent journalists were blocked by the police horses there. Now, in that confrontation that Nick Haddison had with those members of the Victoria Police Public Order Response, his shoulder was dislocated, and this is David Hiscock of the XYZ. I'm going to be sharing a few XYZ articles here because it's better than sharing mainstream media. So the headline is VicPol dislocates shoulder of anti-lockdown campaigner Nick Patterson. And then it has Dave's included some other photos of the day here. So Nick was taken to hospital. He was also bleeding from the head. He did a live stream this morning where he said that it was likely because he's dislocated his shoulder before, his shoulder will need surgery. And this afternoon, Nick was arrested by Victoria Police again. This is by an update from Tricky Tritty, who's leader of the People's Revolution up in Brisbane, local anti-lockdown activist group, that says that the Victoria Police arrested him around 2 p.m. Today. And Tricky says he switched on his recorder and recorded the situation for Nick until police confiscated his phone as part of the arrest. I have a barrister and solicitor who are very experienced in dealing with the police who will be in touch with Nick soon. Nick and his men are on the front line in Victoria, standing up for our rights as the communist dictator regime flexes its muscle on our southern counterparts. As part of an effort to help get the Victorians more organised, I would like to provide Nick and his warriors on the front line with 5 body cams so they can record all of the ordeals with the Gestapo. I mean VicPol, which can and will be used against them. So that's what Tricky Tritty up there is vowing. And Nick was also at the revival church service on Sunday, organised by Pastor Paul Furlong, who was also arrested. Their church was blocked off because religious worship is banned under the Cho directions. This is another XYZ article say Victoria Police disturbed religious worship in Narre Warren, obviously making reference to how Neil Erickson is currently in prison for disturbing religious worship, but it's okay when Victoria Police do it.
Today in Narre Warren, another protest of a different kind.
We don't answer to government.
Raph was there to film it as well.
Corrupt police. We do not answer to puppets. We know our God-given rights.
The Revival Church ignoring the rules, holding a service at an oval with close to 50 people and not a mask in sight.
See, these police think that they can stop us from going out and expressing our freedom of speech.
Soon surrounded by police, including public order response officers, they were told to move on. When they didn't,
Hey, what the You cannot push me like that.
So as I mentioned, Pastor Paul Furlong was arrested. He's been dark on Facebook for the past 3 days. So that was the weekend in, well, the Victorian police state there. And also it has come to, well, the media and the authorities' attention that one of the protesters on the weekend is an aged care worker who is not going to get vaccinated. And, well, shouldn't be surprised that this story was just posted tonight on the aged care workers could be forced to get vaccine as Commonwealth scrambles there. Now, it's clear to me that the authorities are only going to ever end these snap lockdowns unless they're satisfied that enough of the population has both jabs of the various vaccines: AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna. Brett Sutton, who's the Cho, who seems to make all these decisions because the government says they act on public health advice, said 60 to 70% of the population will need to be immunized for him to be satisfied that reached herd immunity. So obviously that means not everyone has to get the jab. But it remains whether various forms of vaccine passports will be issued in Australia. Kreshko says they will only end lockdowns when people tell them no. Well, even though there are there is this substantial anti-lockdown community, the overwhelming majority of Australians and particularly Victorians are supportive of lockdown, supportive of getting vaccinated. The governments wouldn't do it if it wasn't popular. And we saw all throughout the Victorian second wave and 112-day lockdown, the overwhelming majority of Victorians were supportive and compliant with them. So this is why the governments keep doing them, and this is why you see all the queues for the vaccine over the last week. Now, I've already reached probably the 30 minutes here. Now, over in, well, the rest of Australia, things are still substantially normal, although they do have the QR code surveillance system. Wherever you go, you have to do the QR code check-in there. In New South Wales, which is, well, they've only, since the first lockdown, they've only had one localised lockdown, which was the Northern Beaches over Christmas and New Year. Gladys Berejiklian, she is very flawed when it comes to her COVID response, especially always banning singing and dancing. But at least people are largely free in Sydney and New South Wales. And that's also assisted by the hopeless New South Wales Labor opposition after the New South Wales Nationals Party's huge victory in the Upper Hunter by-election last Saturday. The New South Wales Labor leader, Jody Mackay, resigned. So there is going to be a leadership contest now between Chris Minns, who is a mate of disgraced former Labor Senator Sam Dastyari, and former state Labor leader Michael Daly, who, well, a lot of people said choked on the last day, last week of the 2019 campaign, with an accounting blunder, and also a tape was leaked of him saying that our local people are being replaced by Asians with PhDs. That's what he was. That's what he was caught on camera saying there. So that's going to be a shit fight there in New South Wales Labor. The current Labor mess is bad news for the number one fan of the New South Wales Labor Party, Friendly Geordies. John Barilaro finally had enough of Friendly Geordie's constant racist and vile videos against him, and he is suing Friendly Geordies for defamation. There, Friendly Geordies is an annoying Labor sycophant and CCP apologist. He seems to be best mates with Kevin Rudds these days, so ha for Friendly Geordies. But it's not all good up in New South Wales, with the Attorney General up there, Mark Speakman, wanting to pass affirmative consent laws. This is the summary from Corinne Barraclough, and a anti-feminist men rights activist who is regularly on Sky. She has a British accent. It's time to give up sex. Thanks, feminism. So Mark Speakman said that the state government will be adopting all 44 recommendations of the New South Wales Law Reform Commission's review of consent in relation to sexual offences. You can't assume through a lack of resistance or lack of protest that consent has been given. It's very simple. Consent has to be something communicated by the other party saying or doing something. And it goes further down here. Speakman says, to have reasonable belief, an accused will have to have taken steps. A thought process is not such a step. A reasonable step has to be an act or something said to ascertain the complainant's consent. And Corinne says, is he deluded? Man says to woman, would you like to have sex? Woman replies, yes. Things go sour. The pair end up in court, and the lawyer for the accused states above. Now, up in New South Wales, their police, well, they don't have a history of targeting anti-lockdown protesters, but they are obsessed with the sexual consent issue. And earlier this year, their police commissioner, Mick Fuller, proposed a consent app to address growing rates of sexual assault there. Maybe they can have it on the Service New South Wales app that they use for all their QR code check-ins there. But that is life in New South Wales. Still a bit better there. Well, still quite a bit better than Victoria, I will say, but certainly far from perfect. That's it for Tim's News Explosion for this week. I hope you enjoyed my summary here I will see. We will see by next week's program whether I and the other 6 million Victorians are released from house arrest. We're actually not much different here at the moment to Neil Erickson and Thomas Sewell, currently held at the Melbourne Assessment Centre, because they initially, this was an update from Joe Seavey last week, that Neil Erickson was going to be moved at the request of the Police Commissioner Shane Patton to Port Phillip Prison, which is undoubtedly one of the most violent prisons in Australia, but that will not be happening due to the current COVID outbreak there. But yeah, I guess our house arrest situation, it's not too similar to what Neil and Tom are experiencing at the moment. Neil obviously gets out after his 1 month sentence for disturbing religious worship. Tom, we don't know if he will be granted bail. He doesn't appear in court and until I think July 2. That's for the Channel 9 assault there. So when they get out, they will not have missed much, because we've been suffering through another form of imprisonment there. So please, everyone, stay positive. Don't let your hope spirit be crushed. I'm trying to stay positive, keep myself busy with other things, immerse myself in books and movies, disappear to a whole nother world. I've gone way over time here, so thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you this Thursday for Wilms Front, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wilms Front channels. No Trad Tasman talk this week. So until then, please take care of yourselves. Good night, everybody. Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.